gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born upon this day to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. From God our Heavenly Father, this blessed angel came, and unto certain shepherds brought tidings of the same, how that in Bethlehem was born the Son of God by name. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. Oh,
Star of wonder, star of nights, star with royal beauty bright,
westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect light.
Oh, the King on Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again, King forever, ceasing never over us all to reign.
Oh,
Star of wonder, star of nights, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect lights. King and God and sacrifice, King and God and sacrifice. Hallelujah, hallelujah, worship him, God most high. Star of wonder, star of nights, star with royal beauty bright, westward leading, still proceeding, guide us to thy perfect lights.
God rest ye merry gentlemen,
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 God rest ye merry gentlemen.
God rest ye merry gentlemen, nothing you dismay.
Amen. Good morning. Merry Christmas. How's everybody doing today? All right, Julie. Thank you. Welcome to State Street Community Church. We are so very glad that you are with us today during this Advent season. We are marching on through this Advent season, and it's a great time to be together and recognize Emmanuel, God with us. If you brought your wrapped gift for our gift tag, our child in need, today, make sure that you drop those off at the Christmas tree located at the welcome desk. Those will be dispersed this week, and so we want to make sure that we have all those. And again, we are so glad that you're here. If you take a moment and fill out your Connect card, if you received that when you came in, if you have any questions or would like us to know something or a prayer request, we would love to hear from you, and you can place those in the giving boxes located in the foyer at the close of the service. Or you can do that on your app as well. You can find everything that's going on in the service in your State Street app. So welcome. It's Advent. We are celebrating the coming King, Emmanuel, God with us, and we're going to continue to do that.
Oh, come, all ye faithful, joy
Amen. It's always one of my favorite times of years to just come together as a people and sing these songs that are so familiar but have so much meaning, right? There is joy in knowing that Christ has come. Emmanuel, God with us. Amen.
God, to you all hearts are open. Search and know our thoughts and anxious needs. mountain high and valley low, I sing out, remind my soul that I am yours. I am forever yours. I am yours. I am yours. All my days, Jesus, I am yours. I am yours. I am yours. All my days, Jesus, I am yours. I am yours. I am yours. All my days, Jesus, I am yours. I am yours. I'm yours forever. I am yours. I'm yours forever. I am yours. I'm yours. Jesus, I am yours.
We praise you, God, for this gift of your Son, Jesus. This gift of salvation, this gift of rescue. This gift that says and makes this promise that you will make all things new. We rest in this promise. We move forward in hope in this promise. And may we just proclaim that we are yours forever. It's in your name we do pray. Amen.
We are reworking some of our staging and stuff like that because we obviously have different events in here, and one of them is our discussion over dinner and discussion over dessert, and we need to be elevated for that, for the videos and everything like that, especially when we have people sitting out here. And we have these old wood stages that Mike built, I think. But Mike, how heavy are those things? A couple 100 pounds, and poor Roger Clays has been lifting them himself and like managing them on like a dolly, and we're like, well, let's just make this a little bit easier, which these are way easier. And the problem is we don't also like to put them away, so we just use them on Sunday morning too, because that's just how lazy we are. This week, pay attention to your app. If you looked at your app, all of our podcasts, whether it's Sunday morning, whether it's my personal one, whether it's our discussion over dinner, is in your app now. So if you've not downloaded our app, you really should. But pay attention this week. We are going to upload the discussion over dessert. It actually might even be in your YouTube feed already, for a conversation we had on economic development with 3 people. One, the city engineer, Nick Minnick, who is a state streeter here. I don't know if Nick's here or not, but and then we had Beth Schrader, who is the city planner, and a guy named Bert Cook, who is the executive director of the Greater LaPorte Economic Development Corporation. We talked about all kinds of things in LaPorte, the struggle of a Rust Belt city trying to create and carve out a unique niche for itself in a kind of a circle of communities that look very similar. And so it was a fun conversation, and I hope you listened to it to understand our city a little bit better. And then starting in January, we will come back and have live conversations. We'll have dinners and stuff like that. And the first one we're going to have in January is on elementary education. So talking about education for kids. We had one, if you remember, back in, it was I think the first one we did in June, on child advocacy. And one of the kind of things that really resonated with that conversation is we had a principal up here from Riley Elementary, Principal Chris Alber, and people really resonated and had a lot of interest and questions about how to help schools, how schools can help understand or help us, teach us kind of what kids are going through now. And so we're going to just have a larger conversation about elementary education in our community. But then also we'll do one on, intermediate school and high school down the road as well. So today we are in our 3rd week of Advent. And do you guys know, for those of you that grew up, how many people here grew up Catholic? Anybody? Yep. Okay, good. So I could quiz you. Well, how many people also grew up, how many people now regret that they raised their hand when I said how many people here? Yes. Okay. How many people here grew up Episcopalian? Anybody? No? Wow. This is why the Episcopalian Church isn't doing real good. How many people here grew up Lutheran? You all should know these questions I'm going to ask. How many people here grew up Presbyterian? All right. So, what does the pink candle in the Advent candle mean? Anybody? Joy? Yes, it does mean joy. And the name for this weekend is what? What is it? Close. It does mean that, but you have to, because again, we're Christians, and so the language of Christianity is Latin. So what is it in Latin? Yeah. So today is Gaudete Sunday. I'm going to teach you this so that you can impress all your friends on Monday at work. You can be like, hey, what did you do on Gaudete Sunday? If you really want to make friends and be popular at work. And it literally means rejoice. Rejoice. And why is this a different color this week? Well, the story goes that early on in Christianity, priests would pick a pink flower and they would give it to someone on Sunday morning they believed that, needed to kind of, this is just on this one weekend, they would needed to kind of have a little bit of joy in their life and things like that. Because we can kind of, during the Advent season, we can kind of be a little lamentful. We can think about all of the kind of wrong things that the Messiah is coming for, all the injustices. And we needed a Sunday to kind of remember, but all in all, we still need to be joyful about what's happening, that the Messiah is coming. So they'd pick a pink flower and they'd give it away. Eventually, the priests wore pink robes, and then those became pink vestments and things like that, and pink candles. And so, because pink is the color of joy. So Gaudete Sunday, your pink candle and your Advent candle, and your Advent wreath rather, is all about joy. So now when your kids ask you, hey, what's the pink candle? You don't have to make up an excuse. You can actually tell them, because I'm not going to lie, I did that a couple times with my kids. What's the pink one for? It's just, ran out of purple ones. Joy. So today we're going to be talking about joy. Joy in exile, joy in anticipation, joy as we become patient people. And joy can happen when something we've been patiently anticipating comes to fruition. When something that you've been waiting for and waiting for and waiting for happens, and you experience this sense of not just kind of happiness. I think happiness is more shallow than that, but joy at the participation, but also just that that something happened. By the way, this is why we have hardwood floors and this doesn't, so I am screwed. That something happened that you've been waiting for, or other people have been waiting for. I experienced joy just Friday night. So my dear friend Matt Nelson leads our singing company of LaPorte County. It's an adult and children's choir, and in the children's concert, in the adult concert on Friday night, beautiful concert. But my son Finley, who, if you know Finley, a man of little words, he keeps to himself, and he thinks deeply. He wants to be an engineer. Very, very sweet kid, though. Nora and Harry, he's our nicest kid. So we just have the least amount of problems with him. And maybe eventually that's going to come and flip. But who knows? He's quiet. You never know. But he wanted to try out for a solo, which, again, not Finn's personality. Now, here's the thing is, somebody asked me, so did you encourage him? And I said, no, if I would have encouraged him to go out for a solo, he wouldn't have done it, I promise you. But he did it. And So he got up there and he sang his solo, which was in a Frozen medley. It was the Olaf part of the song, and he did it, and he was nervous a little bit. You can't tell because he doesn't give you that on his face. But he did it, and he got done, and he walked out the stage to the side, and he felt like I accomplished something. Here's the thing is, I thought he'd experience joy, but I experienced joy for him. Because he'd been working on the solo every day. I mean, singing it in the car by himself. We'd ask him, hey, Finn, sing your solo. And he'd sing his solo. Okay, slow down next time. Okay, then he'd slow down. We'd hear him in his room singing his solo. He'd be trying his solo over and over and over again because he wanted to do it well. And so when I got to see something he's been anticipating for, he's been waiting for, and he's been working for, and he got to do the thing, I experienced joy because it was the culmination of patience and hard work and diligence. Joy. Last week, it was a week ago, so it'll be 2 weeks from this Tuesday, a week ago, last Tuesday, I got to speak at the problem-solving court graduation here in town. And you guys know, if you've been here for a while, it's a program I'm very passionate about. And the problem-solving court in our county has about 35 people in it, people that have been convicted of crimes, typically drug-related crimes. They've dealt, and they've been given a larger sentence, maybe 5-10 years. And part of their agreement, it's essentially kind of a plea, is that if you go through this process of drug court or problem-solving court, or it's also called Veterans Court, but that just deals with veterans, but the same concept. If you do this, then you will get your sentence suspended, and you get to go back into the real world. But it's not a gimme. It's very hard. You have to do a lot of stuff, and so it's regular drug testing, not just like once a month, 3 times a week. Drug and alcohol testing. You have to go to counseling. They have to, you have to peel back the layers of what brought you here. You go through kind of a rigorous medical kind of examination. Is there something wrong emotionally? Have we missed something along the way for you? You have to go through all kinds of different meetings and job things, and so that you're a participant in society again. Many of them meet with my friend Larry Smith, who's back there, who runs the Intrepid Phoenix, which is it pairs physical education, so like going to the gym and things like that, with recovery, because sometimes you need to take the time that you are spending on, maybe poor behaviors, and put that passion and put that time, put that effort and energy into something better, like, playing basketball or working out and things like that. And Larry's having tremendous success with it. But this program does all of that. And what happens then, you graduate. After 18 months is the soonest you can graduate, but sometimes people fail, and you start back over. So you might even be 18 months in and you're ready to graduate. If you fail and you don't pass a drug test, you go right back to the start, all the way back down. But 6 people graduated from this program. 6 people in December graduated from this program, and I got to speak to them. It was a great honor, probably one of my favorite things I've done all year. And one of the things I like to do is kind of just, if I'm speaking at a funeral or speaking at a wedding, even though there are audiences at this thing, I speak to the people that are the participants, whether it's the couple getting married, whether it's the family that's mourning the death of a loved one. And in this situation, the 6 graduates. And different ages. There was, I think, two females and 4 males. Some of them young, some of them not as young. Most of them are probably 55 or so. But it was something to see. Talk about joy. Talk about joy based on the experience and the hard work of somebody trying to get clean, of going from someone that their life meant nothing to them or to other people, and they've recovered, and they're on a path now. That doesn't mean they're a success yet, but they're on the path towards reclaiming their life. And one of the great things about this program, or the graduation ceremony, is they pair a picture of you when you got arrested, your mugshot, with a picture today. And talk about old clothes and new clothes, old creation, new creation. It's beautiful. Now, I don't know if you know how hard it is to recover. It's very, very difficult. And let's just be honest, most of the success rates aren't great. In this program, though, 75% stay sober, stay working. Yes, it's fantastic. But as I was speaking and I was talking, I couldn't help, though, but think about some other people I knew that would have really benefited from this program. I had an uncle, my mom's oldest brother, who I idolized growing up. He was funny. He kind of reminded me a little bit of a Sam Elliott kind of character. He usually had a mustache like Sam Elliott. Went gray pretty early. But big guy. He was really big. And so probably the biggest guy in our family. And kind of gregarious. My mother, who was the youngest child, idolized her big brother and just really loved him. And but he struggled. He was a veteran, and he struggled with some things, and had a wife and 2 kids, and that kind of dissipated, and he kind of found himself in the throes of addiction. And he didn't know where to go. He kind of, as addicts often do, they can be toxic for their family. They can be really hard to deal with. If you've helped an addict, or if you know an addict, it can be very, very difficult. As much as you love an addict, it can be very difficult, and my grandparents had a hard time. In one of their blow-ups with my uncle, he broke my grandfather's leg and pushed him, and so it was a matter of, right now you're really struggling to a point where we need to get you help. And his help came in getting arrested, actually, and down in Lafayette. And he got put into a halfway house, not so much because they were really working on treatment, but because I think they just needed to put him somewhere. And it was 1996, and it was about 5 months before my mother died, and we got a call, my mother did, and he was with some guys that he knew. He was homeless. He was with some other homeless guys, and they were down in Lafayette, and they say he fell into the river, and they found his body 3 days later. And I often think about him because I think about the great programs I get to participate in now, the addiction programs, the great people I get to meet, like Larry Smith, who's working on sobriety and helping others get sober, the great people I know that are working their recovery. I mean, I'm telling you guys, I have the deepest respect for people who are working their recovery. And that doesn't mean you get it perfect every day, but you're working on it. And I often think about my uncle, who maybe never had those people. And if he did, he wouldn't have heard. But what would I tell my uncle if he was here today? And I wonder if I would know the feeling that he had. I think he felt utterly alone. I think, as addiction does, it makes you feel like someone or something that no one else understands. It makes you feel like you are in prison to something beyond your control. As soon as you think that you have control of this thing, whether it's overeating, whether it's drugs, whether it's bulimia or alcohol, or it could be even as little as addiction can even be internet and things like this. But as soon as you think you have this control over it, it reminds you of how weak you are. And you can feel imprisoned. I wonder what it's like to feel that alone and that much in disarray. So, Gaudete Sunday, joy. Joy in the midst of exile. We're going to be in some Old Testament text today. Here's the great thing about the Scriptures and why I'm so passionate about them. The scriptures can meet you where you're at in about any situation. So if you feel like an other, if you feel like an outsider, if you feel imprisoned to things, to brokenness, to sin, if you feel like there's something in your life that's just controlling you, if you feel like society is wanting to push you to on the outside, one of the things that in my talk on the graduation was to remind the 6 of them is that they belong. They belong in LaPorte County. They belong in our neighborhoods. Even though they've got convictions, even though they've ruined some of the things in their life, even though they carry with them the baggage of their addiction and the poor choices there, I don't want them ever to believe that in spite of the brokenness that any of us carry, that you don't belong here. That you don't belong at the table of humanity, that you don't belong at the table of Christ. Belonging, joy. Let's get into it a little bit and talk about Israel. So Israel, for those of you that don't know much about the Old Testament, God formed for him a people, a group. And this people was formed named after a person, Jacob, who wrestles with an angel. Literally, wrestles with an angel. And because he wrestled with God, Jacob gets his names changed to Israel, those who wrestle with God. And so the scriptures are all about the formation of a people who wrestle with God, about what is good, what is true, what is holy, what is sacred, what is just, what is compassionate, what is kindness. How do we embody that here? How do we love, not just like on the surface, but how do we love like transcendentally? How do we love robustly? How do we love in a way that transforms not only the person being loved, but the person loving? And the scripture, it just wrestles with that idea and how to follow God in that exploration and in that demonstration. And so Israel is that people, but they're not always good at it. Actually, often they're not good at it. And when they should show kindness, they show hate. When they should show unity and compassion and build a bridge, they build up a wall. They make another person an other. When they should take care of the poor, the widow, and the orphan, they go insular and only take care of themselves and their own families and their own people. When they're supposed to take care of the alien, the outsider, those who nobody else cares about because God cares about them, then God tells them, you are no longer acting like my people. And they get put into exile, outside of the place God has given them, outside of the vocation, the responsibilities God has given them, outside of their homes, and they felt alone. Exile is a theme that all of us at one point in our life go through. We feel like outsiders. Maybe it's a decision you've made. Maybe it's just, you've been living your life trying to understand the concept of God, but nobody's allowed you to feel that you belong at the table of God, that you belong at the table of God's people because of something that you've said or something you've done, and you feel like you're in exile. Life in exile is marked by deep sadness and an aching loneliness because you feel like everyone's here, but you're over here. Why is everyone happy, but I'm not? Why does everyone seem to have it together? Does everyone love their jobs, but not me? It seems like everyone's marriage is perfect, but not mine. That is a statement of exile. I am outside, and they are over here. Exile. The people of God struggled with this idea. Now, they were physically exiled, but they're also spiritually and emotionally exiled as well. They didn't know what to do. Now, my ministry, and one of my passions for ministry, is that many of us here, many of us in the people I'm journeying with, me, myself, we feel like we're living in exile, religiously and emotionally, and oftentimes we feel like we're living in exile. Maybe because you're asking a question that, you don't know if the church is allowed to ask. Or maybe you're trying to understand how a life of love and justice actually looks like in tangible, real ways. And you feel like, wait a second, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe, this person doesn't like it that I'm doing this thing. Or we get criticism here because of some of the things that we do through our PAC Center. The ways in which we demonstrate love and justice and radical generosity and things like that. But it's our passion to demonstrate not only that poverty puts people in exile, hunger puts people in exile, loneliness puts people in exile, but the power of God's people is to bridge that gap and to create a place to belong. Life in exile is marked by a deep loneliness and sadness. So the Old Testament has these songs of exile. I think of them like 1960s protest songs, right? They're songs about what's happening around them. They're naming, right? They're naming the things that are happening. This is I'm gonna be a music critic for a second here. This is why I resonate so much with like protest songs, even if I don't agree with the protest song, because the protest song is trying to say something. And let's be honest, a lot of our radio listening right now, the songs aren't saying a lot. You're like, okay, I don't know what's happening here. Listen, and I love Beyonce more than anything, but I mean, she's the queen bee. But I'm still saying, hey, babe, what's this song about? Like, I don't get. I love songs that move you on the inside and either introduce a new question that you weren't asking, or help say something that's never been said, but they say it through song. Some of my favorite worship songs are that way. They say something that I've never thought about saying, or I've never heard articulated in a way that, like, there's something in here that it moves you. This is what exile songs are in the Old Testament. They're acknowledging the world around them, and they're saying, listen, this isn't good. Either we've done something, or they sometimes falsely believe even that God has done something to them. But really what it is no, you've chosen the path you're on. Let's read one of these songs. Make sure we have time. Okay. The wilderness and the dry land. So we're in Isaiah. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad, Isaiah says. The desert shall rejoice and blossom. So already we have this. This is, even though they're in exile, this is a song of hope, right? The wilderness and the dry land, think about the desert, is going to be glad. And the desert, what was once dead, what was once dry, what was once had no life, is going to blossom. Like the crocus, it shall blossom abundantly. What is a crocus? Jane, what's a crocus? Do you know? A flower? Is it? What kind of, is that like a spring flower? Early spring flower. Like an early spring flower. I should really be in our garden club. I probably would have learned that. Can we plant crocuses here? Okay. Yeah. Really should be in the garden club. I do other things. What I do matters too. That's just not true. What I do doesn't matter. Like the crocus, it shall blossom abundantly and rejoice with joy and singing. The glory of Lebanon shall be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. So you hear this, right? What was once dead is going to come back alive again. What was once dry will blossom. There it goes again. And they shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. Strengthen the weak hands. So now we're getting into justice statements. So, hey, there's hope. And what does this hope look like? That the glory of God, the majesty of God will strengthen weak hands and make firm the feeble knees. Say to those who are of fearful heart, be strong, do not fear, here is your God. I love that. Be strong, do not fear. Here is your God. The God that takes nothing and makes something. The God that takes a barren desert and brings beautiful flowers out of it. The God that takes what everyone thought was never going to have growth, was never going to have hope, and brings hope. Be strong, do not fear. That is your God. He will come with vengeance, with terrible recompense. He will come and save you. Then, again, the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then the lame shall leap like a deer, and the tongue of the speechless sing for joy. For waters shall break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. You hear this hope, right? That it's not just hope for nothing or hope for this, no. What is wrong will be made right again. The blind will see. The deaf will hear. Right? What is wrong, the poor will have. Those who are thirsty will have something to drink. Those who are hungry will have something to eat. For water shall break forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return. Those who are in exile will return and come to Zion with singing, everlasting joy, and be upon their heads. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So this is a song. This is a song of exile about the hope of exile being over. And for Israel, for God's people, the hope was that there would be a Messiah. There would be a leader to this. And so when Jesus comes, which again, we are in Advent, this leader is the inauguration of this hope. You remember, maybe anyway, in Luke 4, when Jesus goes to the synagogue and opens up a scroll and he reads of the scroll, this is the actual stuff he says, this is what I'm here for. That the poor will no longer be poor. That the hungry will be fed. And this isn't just spiritually. Jesus deals in the physical too. That justice will be done. Would it surprise you that these beautiful words then originated during one of Israel's darkest hours? Israel had been carried off into captivity. Think about this. They had been conquered by what they perceived to be God's enemy. This group of people did not worship Yahweh. They did not have the same allegiances. They did not have the same values. And Israel believed that regardless of what they did, God would protect them, because that was what their false belief of the covenant. But God's covenant was, you be a blessing to others and I will bless you. You will be my people and I will be your God. But as soon as you stop doing these things, God doesn't make them necessarily go into exile, but God allows that to happen. And we see this dark hour and this hope that comes out of it. All of its cities, including their beloved capital, their beloved Jerusalem, where God's self resided, have been ransacked and destroyed. And it wasn't about, well, I guess I'm going to have to move away. There was nowhere for them to go. They were in captivity. They were exiled from their home. Now, this hasn't happened physically to America for us. We all get to pretty much go where we want to go. We live in a country with the strongest military ever known to man. We don't fear much of this from happening. But I do think many times, if we think about the idea of exile, we have either exiled other people or we have felt exiled ourselves. Exiled from a group. Exiled from a faith. Exiled from a relationship because of a value, because of something you believe, or because of something you've practiced. And in the darkest hour for Israel, they looked to God's extravagant hope that it will be made again, or be made well again, and God's exuberant joy, the invitation. So, because God has not abandoned you, because God is with you, don't forget to rejoice, experience joy, because the story's not over. It's not done. God hears you. God comes for you. God delivers you. I don't know, but you can talk to Larry probably, and he deals with, addiction recovery, these things every day. But I would guess one of the messages, Larry, you probably have to give a lot of your friends that you're working with is that your story's not over, right? That your addiction might tell you that you're going to be an addict the rest of your life, and that there's no hope, and that you're just stuck in this rhythm, and you're stuck in this thing. And one of the earliest challenges is to break out of that and say, no, there is hope. And it's hard. And it might only be a little light in a bunch of darkness, but there's always hope. I've talked to many addicts, even in this church, and we talk about the faith, and we talk about God's promises and God's love and God's mercy and God's grace abundantly. As the Apostle Paul says, grace upon grace. And they say, that's great, but that's not for me. That's for more religious people. That's for better people. And I always think, if grace is only for better people, what's the point of grace? And the Apostle Paul, to make that abundantly clear, didn't say it's just God's grace. He says grace upon grace. That as soon as you think you've tapped out on the level of God's grace, then there's a refilling of God's grace. Grace upon grace. And so when you say, well, that's great, this calling of faith, this calling of robust love and justice, the example and the demonstration of this life that Christ has given us is great, and I would love to do that, but that's for other people, that's for me. And I would say the Scriptures say differently. The Scriptures invite us into a story where everyone can locate themselves somewhere in there. And God tells them that they belong. They belong in this journey. They belong in this pursuit. You belong at the table of God. Not because of anything you've done, but because God has set a place for you. Shame. Shame tells us that we are an other. There's no shame in an invitation. If it was all about you looking good before you ask if you can come to the table of Christ, that'd be one thing. But you've been given an invitation regardless. It's like one of the greatest films of all time, film series of all time is Harry Potter. I will not hear otherwise. I have not read the books. My daughter's read them like 8 times. She's like, she's become one of those snobs. Oh, you think the movie's that good? But there's the scene where the uncle and the aunt, they don't want to send Harry back to school, right? And the owls are delivering the letters, and it just comes and comes and comes. These letters are just coming through every crevice of the house, and they close all the windows and they board them shut, and it still finds a way in because the invitation was going to get to Harry regardless. This is the invitation of grace. It comes regardless of what you've done, regardless of how bad you think you are, regardless of how good you think you are. The invitation to the table of Christ is there. It is for you. The invitation of faith is for everyone. One of my favorite books that really kind of molded me and changed me as I thought about food pantries, as we in a community do so much kind of justice work over at the PAC Center, was a book by Sarah Miles called Take This Bread, A Radical Conversion. And it's a book about how essentially she was in San Francisco, felt a deep sense of loneliness in her hometown, and walked by a church. I think she said, I heard them singing, just an old church, walked in, and in the actual Eucharist had her life transformed. Just this is an invitation, and this invitation to me, regardless of what I brought in here, regardless of how bad I seem, that God has invited me to the table. And she writes this about faith. I'd recommend the book. What I heard and continue to hear is a voice that can crack religious and political convictions open, that advocates for the least qualified, least official, least likely, that upsets the established order and makes a joke of certainty. It proclaims against reason that the hungry will be fed, that those cast out will be raised up, and that all things, including my own failures, are being made new. It offers food without exception to the worthy and unworthy, the screwed up and pious, and then commands everyone to do the same. It doesn't promise to solve or erase suffering, but to transform it, pledging that by loving one another, even through pain, we will find more life. That's faith. That's the invitation of those who are exiled, that you will find that in God. And Israel had been waiting and waiting and waiting for this Messiah, and that Messiah comes, and it's Jesus, and gives them that invitation. Follow me. Whether you're worthy or unworthy, or whether you think you're worthy or unworthy, whether you're screwed up or pious, whether you've did all the right things in life and you've lived your script perfectly, or whether you've not, follow me, Jesus says. And we rejoice because God hears us. He doesn't ignore us. He doesn't let us live in exile. He hears us. He draws near, and he rescues. This is what I'm convicted of. This is the practice of faith that I'm most compelled by, is that all who call upon the name of the Lord will be made well. That doesn't mean today, that doesn't mean tomorrow, but as we, in a practice of faith, continue to call on Christ, to teach us what life is, to help us take what is old and make something new, to help us transform our hate and our lack of forgiveness, to help us transform our addictions, to help us transform our sense of feeling better than others, to help us transform our sense of division. And as we do that, as we call on God to help transform us, I believe he just slowly works like a potter to clay and saves and rescues us out of that old life. Zephaniah, another psalm or another song of exile, says this: "Sing aloud, O daughter Zion. Shout, O Israel. Rejoice and exult with all your heart, O daughter Jerusalem. The Lord has taken away judgments against you. He has turned away your enemies. The King of Israel, the Lord, is in your midst. You shall fear disaster no more. On that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, do not fear, O Zion. Do not let your hands grow weak. The Lord your God is in your midst." And that Lord is Jesus, a warrior who gives victory. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will renew you in his love. He will exult over you with loud singing, as on a day of festival. I will remove disaster from you, so that you will not bear reproach for it. I will deal with all of your oppressors at that time, and I will save the lame and gather the outcast. Again, the work of Jesus. And I will change their shame into praise and renown it in all the earth. At that time I will bring you home. At that time when I gather you, for I will make you renowned and praised among all these people of the earth, when I restore your fortunes before your eyes, says the Lord. So it's Gaudete Sunday, and it's a day of joy. Because in spite of those things that we've done, maybe over the last year, maybe our whole life, maybe the things that we're carrying with us today, maybe it's your own religious and and faith doubts that you feel guilty about, you feel shameful about because you're wondering, is God really like this or is he not? What do we do with these people? What do I say? And you wonder, I don't know what to do with that. Maybe you're here only because somebody made you be here. Maybe you came in today feeling terrible because you've given into your addictions one too many times, whether it's addiction to drugs or alcohol or it's addiction to other things. Maybe you came in here today and you felt better than somebody else. Not different, but better. You made somebody struggle with addiction feel less than. And again, I know it's frustrating. But at the tables of Christ, nobody is better than or worse than. Everyone comes with an invitation, the same invitation. Not because you've done more than another person so you get a better seat at the table. We all get the same seat. And we all get the same invitation. And we all experience the same robust grace upon grace that Christ offers the whole world. And so in Advent, we light a candle today to experience joy, for love and grace and mercy, for hope and experience joy for all that Christ has done, all that Christ will do in the life of people here, in the life of our community, in the life of this church. So we're going to enter into a time of Eucharist where we give thanks for the good and gracious gift that is Jesus. And I do invite you to the tables. If you're new with us, we have 2 Eucharist tables up here. And you've been given an invitation. And you don't have to enter into this Eucharist. But when we do enter into the Eucharist, we take it seriously, as any good person being invited to a meal would. There's nothing you can bring outside of a contrite heart, outside of a heart that says, God, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the ways in which I've chose hate over love, where I've made people feel less than instead of loved as a person created in the image of God, where I've stopped believing in grace, maybe grace for people like me, but not for grace for people like others, or I've put qualifications on grace. I ask for forgiveness. We ask that God continue to fill us with hope, that in spite of our brokenness, in spite of our sins, in spite of the things that we are not victorious in now, that we never lose sight, that the story is not over. God is working, God is moving, God draws near to rescue. And we come to this table, and we give thanks, and we experience joy because of Christ. Will you pray the Lord's Prayer with me? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. The tables of Christ are open.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnets sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise my Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hold
thy grace, Lord, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Here's my heart, Lord, take and seal it for thy courts above. I am bound for the kingdom. Won't you come with me? I am bound for the kingdom. Won't you come with me? I am bound for the kingdom. Won't you come with me? I am bound for the kingdom. Won't you come with me? Hallelujah, we sing. Hallelujah, we
All right, will you please stand before we dismiss? A couple quick things. I do want to remind you about our Christmas Eve services, 5 and 6:30 here at State Street. We will have place for your kids that are like toddler and below, so 3 years and below, so you don't have to necessarily keep them with you. Our elementary kids will be with you in here, but if you have little ones and you want to drop them off in the nursery beforehand, please do. We will have volunteers for that, for those services. Invite your friends and family. It's going to be a lot of fun. It'll be a traditional, as we always have, a traditional candlelit service. Also, preschool registration starts now if you're a part of State Street. We give a couple weeks just for State Streeters before we open it up to the public. So if you have a child that's going to be 3 years old, preschool age, by next fall, we have registration open for you. You can go over to the Connect desk in the foyer and get your packet to sign up for and get that done, because the first week of January, we will open it up to the public, and I'm going to guess it'll be filled by the second week of January, if not sooner. So if you are a State Streeter or you know a State Streeter that's not here that wants to sign up, I encourage you to do that before then, because we will not have spots available much into January. Your Connect cards, if you filled out a Connect card, rather, either through the app, we will get that emailed to us, or if you want to fill out a physical Connect card, you can put that in the giving boxes on your way out. And we encourage you also to give, to be a part of the generous life here at State Street. If you want to give to State Street and be a part of that, and all the work that's here, including the preschool and the PAC Center and the gardens and things like that, you can give in the 2 giving boxes out in the foyer, or go online to statestreet.tv. If you have downloaded the app to get all of our podcasts and stuff, there's a way to give through there, and you can control it if you just want to give once, if you want to set it up weekly or monthly or whatever. You can do it through there, and you can change it. It's very convenient and easy to do. I think over 70% of our people give online, actually, which is a really high number for a church. So you're welcome to do that. If you have any questions about that, please don't hesitate to ask. Do I have any more announcements? Nope. All right. Hey. Oh. Okay. What do you have? Okay. You got 3. All right. Hurry up. Yes. Ah, that's so great.
That's why I can clap my hands.
Yeah, that's so great.
And that's the joy, and I thank him for bringing that up. But one thing to remember, as she said in her writing, pray for us daily. Yes, we accepted, come back to the Lord, but every day we have to look in that mirror and say, I'm proud of the person and see in
Mhm.
that mirror. And for us not to forget them just because they are done, because it's still a daily thing that has to be.
Absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. Congratulations to you and your family. That's wonderful. 4 years. And we'll end with that. It is faith, right? Christianity is a journey that is an everyday journey. It's an everyday invitation. And so this is why we pray every day. Give us this day our daily bread. And so as you go out this week, I pray that that's what God gives you. Everything you need to live a life of love and justice with the people you meet, in the neighborhoods you live, and the communities you embody. So go out in the love of the Father and the peace of His Son, Jesus Christ, and the movement of the Holy Spirit. You are dismissed.